Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher. I use ze, them, and he, him pronouns.
And my name is Judah. I use they/them.
And we're here with a very special guest, Evan, from the podcast T-Boy Swag. Evan.
Hello, yeah, it's me, DJ Pissboy. I use he, she pronouns. And yeah, I'm the DJ of T-Boy Swag, the T for T radio show at UCLA Radio that is solo in its little quest to be a little trans moment.
Little trans haven, let's say, yes. And Evan is here with us because we're having a transgenderism episode, debunking the transgender myth. No. In 2 weeks is Trans Day of Visibility, and since we're going to be on spring break during that time, we wanted to have a little episode talking all about the trans experience from our own perspectives as members of the trans community, from all over the trans spectrum. So today's going to be a mixed bag. It'll be trans joy, some bad stuff that comes with being trans and transphobia, but just a little genuine glimpse into how we live as trans people. Do we want to start with like introducing our identities potentially, or like some sort of like your intersectionalities or where you fall on the trans conglomerate?
Conglomerate.
The
wow.
And the trans corporation?
The
What's
trans
your role?
monopoly.
Yeah.
It's gonna get trust busted
Some
soon.
conservative is gonna like soundbite
It's gonna
that and
soundbite
be like,
that.
do you see what I mean?
Did
This
you
is-
see?
I thought it's like a domino effect of like this episode, and then the domino effect is the collapse of like the U.S. like modern economy.
Yeah. 'cause-
Like of like trust busting. One can only hope. One can
I can
only
only
hope.
hope. I wish we had that impact, TBH.
You never know. Yeah. I guess I'll go. Hi. Yeah. I already introduced myself. I feel like I need to-
Hi, I'm Evan. My name is Pissboy.
I'm
And
first name Piss, last name Boy.
Pissboy is my gender. Thanks.
I identify as trans masculine and as a lesbian. I kind of came into like a lesbian identity somewhat recently. I want to say last spring-ish. I just realized, wow, I'm not attracted to men in any like tangible way, and I'm also not a man. So,
And then a lesbian was birthed.
and then a lesbian was born. I would also have been like, I was like, wow, all my friends are lesbians. Like every single one of them is a lesbian. Like this is kind of like indicative of like larger things, I think. So yeah, now I'm here. Yeah, I've just mainly have identified as trans masculine for the longest time. For like, I went on testosterone when I was like 17, like
Ooh,
right
nice.
before like I turned 18, like December of 2019, and like before that I identified like really binary, and then as soon as I started taking testosterone I was like, wait, no, I'm not a man.
I love that too, because everyone thinks of like tea as like the man juice, but you're like, it's actually reverse man juice.
Yeah, it literally
The man was taken away from me.
the man was taken away. I started getting like treated as a man, and I was like, wow, I don't fuck with this at all. Don't approach me in this way. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Apart from T-Boy Swag, I've done most of my activist work has been in trans community spaces. So yeah, let's move.
LGBT Center.
Yeah, and then
Love those intern emails.
Yeah. In community, Ebony Barra.
Oh yeah. And Judah, what about you?
God, that's a hard question.
Yes, you must put a pinpoint on it or you're gonna have to leave. Sorry. I'm
Um,
kidding, please.
I like, and I've said this before on the podcast. I think I said it last episode too, that like my transness is really tied to my bisexuality because I can't choose. I can't decide. Some days I wake up feeling feminine, some days I wake up feeling masculine, other days I wake up feeling neither. Yeah, so that's where I am right now. Which is weird because like I started when I got here to UCLA and I started going to trans up and stuff, I was leaning more into being like trans masculine. COVID happened, and then it was like, you know what? I don't know if I'm feeling that anymore. You know what I mean?
The COVID vaccine is also reverse man juice. The conservatives were right.
I also think part of it too is I also started taking birth control, which is not like horrible. I'm fine. But like I think that also kind of like had an effect in terms of like my gender, because unfortunately birth control, you know,
The
hormones do make things like my ass got fatter. Just a little bit. My ass got fatter. My boobs got a little bit bigger, because of the estrogen and progesterone. So like, and I was like, I'm not hating this. I'm not. I was like, when I like got to UCLA, I was hating it. I was like, oh, I want to bind. I need to like, you know, slim myself or like wear clothes as like loose as possible. Because I felt very dysphoric. And then I don't know what happened. I no longer started feeling that way, and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of into this. Yeah, and like I've also said this too, like I don't identify as a cis woman. I would never call myself one because I'm not. But I do have a lot of experiences that do align with cis women, if that makes sense. Like, it's not that I am a cis woman. It's more so that my experiences, because I was socialized as feminine, that is like what happens. And yeah, I also don't really use she her pronouns for the most part. I use they/them. I want to try out fae/fair because I think they're pretty pronouns.
I mean, they're like super cute.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why we added sparkles. The sparkles on the transgenderism banner are for fair only.
Like only purely for like aesthetic reasons, you know.
A very important reason to use pronouns.
Yeah,
the most important.
That's why I chose with my pronouns. I chose X instead of Z. Like, there's literally no other difference besides I like X better. Like,
I used to use Z her like I would call it like I didn't like how it was like said here, like because I fucking hate that like noise, like it's just like the most funny or whatever, and so I would just like Z her, and it was literally because of a comic book character that used those pronouns, and I was like,
that's so real.
I literally love that comic book character so much. I'm stealing your pronouns.
Oh my god, I remember being so excited because I like didn't know anyone else who used neopronouns when I got to UCLA. And then I got like an outreach email from Evan, and it was like Z here in the signature, and I was like, ooh. So you were a key part of my development as a trans college student, even though you don't use them anymore.
They're like resting peacefully in a nice little like graveyard. I give flowers every day.
Yeah, it deserves it. But yeah, it's and then I have my experience. I identify as a trans man. I do also identify with the label genderqueer, although not because I feel like I'm non-binary, but because I think just my experience as a trans man is very queer. And I like that word, and the flag is cute, and we need to get one for the office because I run the show here and I want a flag. But yeah, I also started out as a very binary trans man in high school. I came out when I was 16. Because that was like the only option really. Like that was back in the dark days of transmedicalism on Instagram and the internet, where it was like huge to, you know, make fun of people who were not experiencing transness conventionally.
The height of Calvin Cara.
Yeah.
Okay, but YouTube deserves all the smoke for pushing those videos.
I know.
Literally.
Not you ruining an entire generation of trans masculine people. That's so awkward. But yeah, I like embraced the genderqueer label when I got to college. I use the term gender void sometimes because like how your gender is like tied to your bisexuality, mine's very tied to my disability. I'm wearing my trans wheelchair shirt today.
So cute.
Thank you. But yeah, because I like grew up, I was diagnosed with my chronic illness when I was like a year and a half, so I like have never not been the disabled kid. That like separates you inherently from like typically developing like boys and girls. So I was like separated during PE and like other activities. So I was like, I sometimes call it like assigned disabled at birth because it's not like being socialized as either a man or a woman. So sometimes, like, use the term gender void because when I look at my body, I haven't, physically transitioned at all, but I look at my body and I just see it as a body instead of being inherently feminine or inherently masculine. And I kind of like using like a term to describe how I feel like I'm on the outskirts of what it means to be trans because of my disability. But outskirts in a good way. I'm like a little alien on a little planet that I'm like digging. So yeah, that's a bit about me. And also, as I mentioned, I use neopronouns. Insert shock and horror. Yeah. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
I feel like I'm like, wow, you guys like said so much. I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just a little guy.
I'm just a little lesbian.
a little lesbian.
Hey, you're a valid little lesbian. We appreciate
Valid
your
little
description.
lesbian. I guess I could kind of bring it to other identity though. A lot of my gender is really connected to one, how I was like raised. I was raised in a very female dominated household.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally have never lived with men ever until like college.
Oh wow.
And I hate it. So like I grew up with like my mom and my grandmother, and they were just like very like, we don't need a man to do shit. Like we don't care. We're just gonna live our lives. So I kind of like grew up in like an Amazonian little like household. So I just like my interpretation of manhood, I've realized like is not manhood. It's just kind of like a kind of digging the vibes of like the fashion and the like and the look, but like don't know anything about the socialization. And then I'm mixed race. My mom is white and slightly Polynesian. It's complicated. That's a bag of worms in and of itself. But she's like from Hawaii. And my dad is Mexican Colombian. And so I've always had like a weird relationship with race. I look very white passing, but then also in moments people are like, oh no, you don't look like, you look obviously Latino. It's just like, okay, what? So like a
what's true?
Like what is
I don't
true?
know.
Like I've never like I view kind of like a lot of people's perception of me is not really like congruent to myself. Like I've like there's multitudes there that are both right and wrong at the same time, and people just pick and choose whatever one that they see and then like ignore the rest typically. So I kind of like I see myself as just kind of like a vessel to carry my head into different rooms. So I relate to the gender void. It's just like my trans masculinity is very like in a weird little muddy, in the same place that like multiraciality is, where it's like race is a binary, gender is a binary.
Yeah.
Breaking both of them.
It's interesting too, like you mentioned, like how people perceive you, because like the whole thing with transness is like a lot of people will perceive you differently than you define yourself as, and like we have the power and also don't have the power to like take back what people perceive us as. It's funny because when I first came out in high school, I did debate, so you get to like dress up in like obviously very gendered but formal clothes. So like before I came out, I wore like dresses that were just so ugly. It was so bad. So that's one benefit to transness. You're hot. You become hot. But I started like wearing suits, but I was still nervous to like use the men's room. And the only time, luckily, I've been harassed in a bathroom was at 2 different debate tournaments where I was too scared to use the men's room and I was wearing a suit. And I apparently passed better than I thought I did. So the first time an old lady yelled at me because she thought I was like some perv. And I'm like, okay, wow, that's a classic trans experience. And it's only been like 6 months. But the second time I like freaked some girls out in a women's restroom. And then I was like, I don't want to do that again. So I like never, even though I wasn't particularly ready yet, I like didn't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. So I started using like the men's room. And I've got to like, I'm good with it now. I am still uncomfortable because why is there piss on the floor?
No, it's awful.
It's so
awful
bad.
in there.
I think I was telling Chris one time that I would rather go use a women's restroom
No
than
matter
use a
what.
men's restroom because I physically cannot.
It's horrible. I'm like, how can you have an additional organ for aiming and you still pee on the floor? I don't get it.
I was always like, my entire childhood, I was always in women's restrooms. If I was going, like my mom was taking me to the restroom and going to the women's restroom. It was just a given. Why is the men's room like that?
Yeah,
like
why is it
like that?
That's the bathroom bill we need. Clean the fucking bathrooms. Please.
There needs to be like mandatory training for like
how to piss.
like this is how you take care
This
of your
is the piss boy.
Yeah.
The piss boy legislation.
the
that
piss
we're
boy
doing.
legislation is like treat all the people like all men, all cis men. Who raised you?
Genuinely.
Who raised you?
Did you pee on the floor when you lived at home? Like I don't
They
get
don't
it.
wash their hands apparently.
Oh my
at
god.
Any time.
Oh, it's funny because they got rid of the paper towel dispensers in the Ackerman bathrooms on the first floor, and now you can tell that people don't wash their hands because you can't hear the air thing. And I'm like, oh guys.
Oh, that's just like an ugh.
Oh,
Well, first
guys.
of all, the air dryers, somebody found that it actually
Oh, they're-
spreads more
yeah,
bacteria
I'm sure.
than
Much
like
worse.
using the napkins. So not only is that gross, but also people are not straight up washing their
Yeah,
hands.
it's bad.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Be
I
okay
never
with it.
understood why like our public restrooms are divided in such a strange way.
Yeah.
Because our house, like in houses, our bathrooms are not divided like that. Like we don't, like in my apartment, we don't have like a men's and women's restroom.
Yeah, and
We have like a restroom.
yeah.
It just
I
makes-
feel like other countries have just like unisex.
yeah, or at least like one of them is just urinals.
Uh-huh.
Like they'll have like a urinal like against the wall, kind of like Roman style.
Uh-huh.
Like that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
Why do you have to have urinals and then stalls too?
If you could just like combine them into one space.
Yeah, just have one room with stalls and one room with urinals.
Interesting. Revolutionary. Please, for the love of God.
Please.
Well, then the whole bathroom would be disgusting if we're being honest. We're taking one for the team
I'm
to
not.
make gender neutral restrooms.
I'm not going into the urinals. So...
Absolutely not. I'm staying on this side.
yeah, I'm
Goodbye.
staying on that side.
Listen, our bathroom bill is much more practical than
Yeah, come
whatever,
on.
whatever's
Listen up.
going on.
Wake up, people.
Since we're speaking about how absurd the bathroom bills are and
Mhm.
how absurd our state of the bathrooms are, I guess, we should talk about the absurdity of transphobia. Jesse Singal, that journalist who wrote that really awful article with that nurse, Jamie Reed, who was like, look at these trans kids who aren't really trans, and I shouldn't have this list because I got fired or whatever, and still had access to it. He deleted his account.
That's good.
Yeah, Jesse Singal deleted his account after people were saying that he committed a HIPAA violation.
He's like, how to avoid the law. Delete my Twitter. And now nobody can find me.
Well, because he was tweeting through it. He was tweeting.
My God,
Through-
I've never heard of a subpoena.
No, he was just like tweeting through like his entire like meltdown of his article after people were pointing out that it was a HIPAA violation because this
Uh-huh.
nurse shouldn't have had access to that information because A, she no longer worked at that clinic, at that specific gender clinic. B, these patients were not her patients.
Oh, they weren't even her patients?
No, some of them were not her patients.
Oh, God.
Some of them were like files that she pulled from like the psychologist's office, I think.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Fun fact, a HIPAA violation is $150,000 per person. That
Oh.
is the max fine.
You know, I don't like poverty. I do like it when she's in poverty.
Yeah.
I just think it's absurd. Like, I was telling my twin this the other day, and I was like, it doesn't make any sense to me that that's the hill that you want to die on.
Mhm.
Like,
and
there's-
also, like, what the goal ends up being, because it's not like you saying that on Twitter is gonna, like, revoke resources from those kids.
well, here's the most mind-boggling part. So she used a quote from a trans kid who said, "I identify as an attack helicopter" as like a joke. She used it as a quote to like be
Oh
like,
my
look at
God.
these like, look at this like trans child.
How
They're
much
not
you want to
actually
bet
serious.
there's like a ... before and after the quote, and it's like, some people make fun of me and say I identify as attack helicopter and it hurts my feelings, and she's just like, I know exactly what to take from this quote.
Well, first of all, it's a joke. Second of all, it's the only joke that like the right wing has.
Yeah, how did
Like,
that's the
I'm like,
thing.
how did you not like realize that that person was joking
Friendly
around?
fire.
Like, that is literally the only joke you have is, look at these trans people. They identify as like helicopters and caps or whatever. It's absurd.
Mhm.
It's absurd.
Transphobia is like really baffling, I guess, of like kind of the universality of it sometimes. Just
True.
because, okay, like, don't judge me for what I'm about to say, but I've been watching South Park, and
That's so real. Shout out to
Um,
my millennial sister who also watches South Park and says, "Don't judge me" before she starts
Yeah.
talking about it.
I've watched like way too much for me to like feign any like, oh, I
Hey, you know
Don't-
what? The quote of, is it Cartman? He goes like, "You guys are so cisgender." I don't know if it's edited.
You guys
but
are
it's like,
cis-
"You guys are so cisgender. Suck my clit and my balls."
yeah.
That's
It's like weird
perfect.
because they have like that episode, but then they have like other episodes where they get really transphobic,
Mhm.
and it's like crazy. Just kind of like one of their first episodes was about like gay rights and how gays should like being gay is okay,
Uh-huh.
and then they have like just really like it was like kind of a parodying the like trans sports stuff,
Mhm.
and it's like, oh my god,
Pick a side.
like it's like pick a side, pick a fight, like what, like
They're like both
let's
sides
think
of
about
but
it.
South Park.
like let's think about this, guys. Let's think about this, guys. Like logically, what is it? Like what is it? What is your dog in this game? Like I don't know. Transphobia is just so wild in the sense of like it just really doesn't care. It doesn't matter. Like
Mhm.
people being trans, it does not matter to anyone else in society. Like it's who cares? It's like a personal journey. It's like being queer. It's like whatever. Nothing bad is happening because people are being transgender. Besides the fact that maybe there's more hot people out there.
Yeah.
The
hotness that's why Republicans are so scared. They're like, fuck. Maybe I'm not monogamous after all.
It's
I want to
like-
date all these hot trans people.
It's just so because it's first of all, it's nobody else's business what you decide to do with your body, whether that be transition or not.
Yeah.
But also like it just like at the end of the day, it's not hurting anyone else. You know what I mean? Like it's not like you're not physically getting like a transphobe is not physically getting like cut every single time somebody
Every time
decides to
there's
transition.
one guy, it's like those who walk away from Omelis.
Uh-huh.
And there's one cis guy who gets punched in the face every time a trans person puts a pill in their mouth or takes a T-shot. And he's like dying, and that's who they're on the hill fighting for. It's ridiculous.
I hope so.
I hope there's one. You know what? We're gonna actually institute that.
We're gonna make him
when
real.
Piss Boy is elected, the first thing that she will do is
The first thing I will
pick
do.
one a cis person and put them in a basement.
Cis sacrifice.
Cis sacrifice. Yeah.
At this point, it might as well just be Trey Parker. Like, I didn't say that.
Yeah, redacted.
Redacted.
It's the absurdity of transphobia. It's like interesting because like I feel like the general like mid-liberal response to transphobia is like trying to disprove it, but like the whole point is that like transphobia is inherently illogical. So like arguing against it, like you can argue with a fascist how many ever times you want, they're still going to be like a fascist.
True.
So it's interesting, like those accounts that are just, you know, the classic liberal argues against a conservative on Twitch. And they're like, obviously there's two genders or whatever. And it's like,
who cares?
like, first of all, who cares? Second of all, like, you're factually incorrect, but there's nothing I can do to prove that to you. So it's just like, I'm gonna go. Thanks though.
And like, although like cis people are well-meaning when they say like, "Oh, transness isn't a choice," like it very well can be. Like it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you don't know the other person, like the trans person that is transitioning. Like they could have very well one day woken up and been like, you know what?
I kind of like this.
I kind of like this. I'm gonna try something out real quick.
To be honest, the thing of like choice with transness is a lot more complicated because I feel like with like we talked about this in the bi episode last week, like the idea of choice with like sexuality is I feel like sexuality is fairly cut and dry in which like you are choosing to like another gender or you are not. But well, that's like the argument or whatever. But with transness, like transness in and of itself is nothing more than I use like the gender I'm experiencing is different than the one I'm told I should experience.
Right.
So like, you know, there's no code anywhere for like the star gender fae fair kid where it's like, oh, sorry, you don't count for all these requirements because, like, you know, you don't need to physically transition to be like, it's literally just your personal decision of whether or not you want to take on that label, motivated by whatever it is you're experiencing.
True.
So, like, at first when I came out, I thought that, like, I need to go on hormones, I need to get top surgery, and then, like, as I came to terms with, like, my own body and what I wanted out of my identity, I decided that is not what I want to pursue, and that's fine. And, like, I'll fight like hell so that other people can have that opportunity and have that choice of whether or not they want to experience those things. But, like, the choosing of, like, taking on the trans label, like, we have no idea if, you know, other trans people just decided, you know, I want to get this, I want to use this label, and honestly, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If that was a fact or not.
It's like, with, like, I don't know, transness, it's always, like, it's so odd to, like, kind of articulate it, because, like, I feel like with queerness, in, like, a sexuality sense, like, you have, like, you just, like, oh, I'm attracted to blank, or I'm not attracted to blank, I'm attracted to this, or I'm just not attracted, blank, like, period, end of statement. With, like, transness, it's so weird, just, like, figuring it out, because, like, people try and look for signs. It's like palm readings and shit where they're just like, well, were you a tomboy as a kid? Like, how did you act as a kid? And it's like, I loved Thomas the Tank Engine, and I loved Barbie. I loved Angelina the Ballerina like no other, and I also loved Thomas the Tank Engine like no other. Did I like the fruity mean one? Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. That's the gender
James.
I have.
I love James. And it's so weird trying to, like, prescribe, like, oh, it's because of this and this and this. I don't know. I remember, I think, like, how I realized I was trans, it was, like, in middle school. I just had this reoccurring thought of, like, if I was a guy, what would I look like? And then it just stayed. And then I was, like, I just started imagining my future self as, like, some honestly mid as fuck 40-year-old man that's, like, low-key balding with, like, glasses, and, like, I'm just some dad, like, I'm kind of short, like, it was very realistic, like, and I was just like, that's kind of a vibe.
That's kind of a vibe.
Kind of a vibe.
You kind of want to be that guy.
I kind of want to be that guy, and I'm like, that's realistically all I'm seeing in the future. I'm not, like, I was already just a very masculinely built, like, person. I was just like, there's no way in hell I'm being, like, some pretty damsel. Like, that's not in the cards.
Yeah.
And then this, I was just like, yeah, I'm rocking with it. This is a vibe. And then I've just been doing that ever since. And it's, like, so odd whenever, I've, like, interacted with the transphobes, just because they're like, oh, like, how many genders are there? I'm like, dude, I literally don't care. Like,
it literally matters so little that I've never even thought about it.
Like, I don't know, don't care. Good
how
for
many
them.
genders are there? All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
All of the genders.
That one meme that's like, I don't know, I just got here.
No, it's literally I don't know, I just got here, dude. Like,
every time the conservative complains, they just add another gender to
yeah,
the
there's like a subscriber count when it's increasing.
Let's hit
15 million. Come on, Mr. Beast is gonna sponsor us with 15 million. And that's the thing too, is like, that even because gender is, because, like, attraction, although everything is socially constructed, attraction feels like I said, like, a little more cut and dry, of, like, even if gender didn't exist, I feel like it would be a little, like, it wouldn't change much who you were attracted to and stuff like that. But with gender, if, like, the institution of gender did not exist, neither trans nor cis people would exist. But also, like, each individual person is their own gender because it's socially constructed. So, like, the three of us, even though we all identify with the trans label, like, all experience transness vastly differently. If you put a room of 500 cis women, they're all going to experience womanhood slightly differently. And, like, sure, you don't have to put, like, a label on it where, like, you know, I'm experiencing womanhood in type A.1/7 way, you know, but, like, at a certain point, like, everyone is experiencing gender in their own way, and we shouldn't try to define what it is for everyone. I feel like that's the main TERF thing, is, like, defining womanhood by, like, certain parameters that ultimately exclude cis women as well. But, like, the goal of trying to define what transness is inherently, or what womanhood or manhood or whatever is inherently, is ultimately like a dead end, because the human experience is effectively infinite, like 8 billion people. There's like no way you can have a definition that like encompasses like 4 billion people at once. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I always feel like, especially when it comes to like targets or other transphobes, where they're just like they're like, oh, you were born this way and so you're this, kind of like almost a predestination style, like
manifest destiny,
like a religiosity to it of like pilgrims. It's like it, like the pilgrims leaving England today in TERFs.
Mm-hmm.
Direct line.
It's a circle.
It's a circle.
They're all reincarnated pilgrims.
Like, I think it's interesting, like, at least if, like, when it comes to, like, for my identity, for instance, like, I look very masculine, and I pass as a man most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy with it. I take testosterone whenever I remember to, and I'm chilling. And people are like, oh, how are you a lesbian? And it's just like, I am not a man. Like, in any way, shape, or form, you cannot look at me and be like, that's a man. Except for visually. Like, if I take off my clothes and I'm standing naked in front of you, you're not looking to be like, yeah, that's a man.
That's the quintessential man.
That is a man. Like, that is the, like, is it the Vertuvian man?
Oh, yeah, with the arms up.
Yeah, with the arms and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, oh, yeah, that's a man. That's a cis man.
Leonardo da Vinci actually sculpted you. That's crazy.
That's crazy. That'd be actually insane. But it's like kind of like a weird little catch-all, just like, I'm not a man. So what am I? And then it's like a, like getting like just thinking of like transphobes and like okay, then actually define me and what I actually am, and explain what's happening here.
It's like, what if I didn't? What are you gonna do about it?
What if that's false?
Like, my lesbianism is actually a series of true or false statements.
Oh, it
coded
literally
into a computer. It's so funny. Like, that idea of how, I think, is, or like people asking like, how are you trans? How are you a lesbian? Like, explain your existence to me. Where it's like, I don't know, I feel like it.
I'm out.
And like Evan is not removing resources from lesbian spaces by using a term that has been used by trans masc people for 50 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's just this false, I feel like just in transphobia in general, there's a false alarm that, trans people are disintegrating the nuclear family and good, and therefore destroying, like, it's all a threat to like the imperialist nature of the US or whatever, right? So it's like, yes, we are in fact destroying the nuclear family unit. And
I was actually thinking about this a lot the other day, because I was thinking about how absurd it is that there's a lot of cis queer people who like align themselves with alt-right groups because of their transphobia. And I'm like,
embarrassing.
It's A, embarrassing, and B, it's like these people are going to turn on you the minute you say something that they don't like.
When we are, if there was in some universe where we were gone, even though for every baby born there's a trans baby born, whatever.
True.
Like, say we're gone, you're next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
and that's what
it's
I'm
like
saying.
the poem from like Nazi Germany. It's just like, I did nothing about blank, and then they eventually came for me type thing. I feel like, I don't know, I've been the whole like kind of topic of like trans genocide that's like kind of cropped up of like a realization of like kind of looking at the stage of genocide, like, oh, it's kind of approaching.
it's coming
it's
close.
Good,
yeah.
It reminds me of V for Vendetta, and Valerie's Letter. Like, I don't know, I'm a big V for Vendetta fan. The book, and the book, it's like, the movie's great. The book itself focuses a lot on like the effects of like cultural genocide on like their society, and like the absolute like one of the characters is like a cop, which he's like kind of your sympathy into that side of things, I guess, as a character. And he literally goes to like this extermination camp that like existed. Jeez. And is just like, I miss everybody, like both like immigrants, queer people, of like the color they brought into the life of like his the country, because now they're in a fascist dictatorship, and he's like, you guys brought so much color and life into my world. I'm so sorry. Like, he's just like apologizing, and like I think he's like tripping on acid too. Like,
He's like, these colors do not compare to what you guys brought.
And he's just so apologetic. If he's just like, I was a fucking idiot that like fell for propaganda. I don't know why I did it. I just did it because I was told to, and now I'm so sorry. And
the trans people in cages are like, cool, can you let us out, actually?
yeah,
That'd be
it's
sick. If you could like unlock the door, that would be awesome.
and it's something like I come back to, like, whenever it comes to like talking about like transness, and I guess like the nearing threat of worldwide the rise of totalitarianism worldwide. It just kind of reminds me of everybody looks at 1985 and it's like, okay, well, read more things. V for Vendetta is just like I feel like there's going to be a kind of like epiphany, I hope, that's similar, that's just like regret.
I try my hardest every single time, like, especially when my family gets into conversations about transness. I try every single time to be like, don't fall into those pitfalls, because at the end of the day, like, it's hard. Not that my family is like super conservative, but they are Catholic. Like, that is something that does impact the way that they view the world. And not so much my parents, but my grandparents for sure, specifically my grandmother. Like, it's hard. It's hard to have those conversations, but I think it's really necessary to like call them out when they happen. Just because it is so easy. Like, the way, so, and not that it's completely like the internet's fault, and I don't want to give algorithms too much credit. Or say that it's purely algorithms, because there are some people who are just like hateful, spiteful souls, that do genuinely hate the world and want to see it burn. But you know, the internet has made it so easy to spread transphobic propaganda. Like, that was like the whole thing with like the New York Times. Like, there's that letter that was being spread around by other trans journalists asking the New York Times to like be more impartial on this like trans debate.
And then the day after, they released an opinion piece, an op-ed that was like in defense of J.K. Rowling or whatever.
Oh, don't even get me started.
Nice response.
Didn't even get me started. She basically compared. I think yesterday there was like screenshots going around of an article that was being written about her from an interview where she compares people who are fighting for trans rights to the Death Eaters in Harry
you mean
Potter.
The Nazis in your book?
The wizard so Nazis, even though she herself aligns with actual Nazis.
That's so embarrassing.
J.K. Rowling is so like, I used to love Harry Potter as a kid, and now it's like one of those things I look back at, even if like she wasn't an awful person, it's just like, these books kind of suck. Like, they're kind of mid as fuck.
It's kind of mid as fuck and kind of a little racist, not gonna lie. And that, you know, like the tragedy of like queer people turning on trans people, like Alice Walker.
Oh yeah,
published a piece in defense of J.K. Rowling, like defending her right to be transphobic. It's so funny. The week before, we featured her on our Instagram for like queer figures, and then she posted that, and we're like, okay, archiving that post. But it's like, it's so tragic how so many people, and so many intelligent people who were like Alice Walker, who somehow miss that this oppression is aligned with anti-queerness, like racism, and these like past atrocities that have happened.
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, like, I remember there was a dating site? It was for
the conservative one?
Not the conservative one. There was an app, I think, for women to meet each other. And in order to be on the app, you had to take a picture of yourself, and it would like analyze your features to
determine if you were allowed on the app.
Yeah. And I was like, that's crazy to me, because most of the Jessie Gender, who's a transgender YouTuber, video essayist, did a really good video on it on AI. And she was talking about how, like, you know, it gets kind of murky. like AI and transness, because AI will recognize only what's being put into its system.
Yeah,
and
if
it's
the
most of
person
its
coding it is
Yeah.
transphobic or
Or-
uses images of like a stereotypical Eurocentric woman.
right.
Yeah, there's like an inherent bias like to like AI, and it goes into other pieces of technology, even with cameras. Like cameras, the whole Polaroid. I know way too much about this because I'm a cinematography person, but like the Polaroid girl, film was developed for like light skin. That's why like going in and out, like shooting for darker skin tones has been difficult. They've had to change a lot of things just because it wasn't originally developed for it, and it looks like even go back to regatypes, they're all calibrated for like a Eurocentric skin tone, and it affects cameras and how cameras work today, and it affects how we even process AI images because of like you're taking photos with a color basis that's meant for this, and then you have like people that don't fit this color system that like the camera is having issues even processing the image, that then you don't really put those images into an AI program, and it's like it's ridiculous.
It's like an ironic dehumanization where like this thing doesn't even recognize you as on the same level as these other humans.
It's crazy.
Like that. Everything goes back to fucking racism, if we're being honest.
It
like,
really does, because most AI that's being programmed is being programmed by white men who associate womanhood with whiteness, with certain standards with whiteness.
Even like the fact that like certain nose types are
Oh,
seen as more
yeah.
inherently masculine or feminine. I feel like there was some women's group that got in trouble for like, or TERFs attacked them because they had like a more masculine looking nose in their logo. It was like a bunch of like side profiles of women, and like a bunch of women, like I think like a bunch of South Asian women are like, that's just a nose from a different part of the world, it's not automatically a man. Like
Also chins too, like that's another huge thing, is like jawline and like chins. Like if you have a more square jawline, you're clocked immediately as someone who's not a woman.
but then when you're a cis woman with that type of
Yeah,
style,
when
you're
you're
like incredibly
exactly
desirable.
Or like even women that are like muscular. I've seen a few Instagram reels of this one woman who does lifting, and she's constantly called a man in her comments, even though she's a cis woman, and she says it in her video. She's like, I'm a cis woman, I just do a lot of like lifting. Like my body type is because I do a lot of lifting. It's not because, I'm a man.
In The Last of Us 2, when it was revealed there was going to be a trans character, everybody thought it was Abby because she was muscly. And it is not, in fact. She is not. She's just a muscly woman. Like, guys. Based off a real person who looks like that. Like, and even with you mentioning, like, different body types, like trans sports bands or whatever, right? Like, the fact that shitty hormone requirements for that are meant to target trans athletes end up excluding typically like black women who happen to have more testosterone and therefore cannot compete.
There's also certain illnesses like PCOS. Like I have a roommate who has
which is like
PCOS.
so common.
It's really common, but it causes more testosterone. It's more testosterone in your body. And so like I always think it's interesting because they say, oh well, you don't. One, there's just a lot of scientific misinformation out there, but also like the fact that like there is going to be people who are cis that have more of one hormone than the other. Like even for men, even for cis men, there are some men who produce more estrogen than testosterone. Like I always think it's wild that like people can't, or transphobes can't conceive of that concept, or like they can't conceive beyond like what they've like been told in outdated science books. And like even with the whole like, even with, they always say like, oh, they're gonna know, like archaeologists in the future are
when
gonna
they
know
dig up your bones
what you were really when they dig up your bones. And even archaeologists are like, no, we don't.
TBH, if I'm dug up in 500 years, that's kind of sick. You think I'm important? That's cool.
Yeah,
I don't care. Like, oh, my childbirthing hips. Oh no.
Oh boy.
Oh no, when I'm deceased and will no longer care, I'm sure it's gonna have a real big impact on me.
It's really interesting, I guess, like when it comes to like the medicalization, like the medical restrictions of stuff. Because I think I talked about this even when we first met. My one of my friends was telling me about like a mutual friend of like a friend of hers that like is intersex but identifies like as just as a woman. It doesn't identify as trans in any way. Was like getting was inquired about medical care because if she was having some issue, and she wasn't able to get it because they just kept reading her as a trans man and refusing service. And she's like, no, I just have this like
Intersex condition.
yeah, this intersex condition, like this is what's happening, help me out. And was dealing with it and still dealing with it to this day. And like I think when my friend was telling me about it was just kind of like a lot of the transphobia is rolling back just healthcare access to like it's like the same like it's just a story just rolling back using trans people as a scapegoat to roll back healthcare access across the board. Because like when you have like if like trans people can get like hormone therapy and get like top surgery like get a mastectomy, have kind of freedom of like bodily autonomy, then like, oh, what about women and abortions? Oh,
Yep.
That's scary.
Interesting how this is all mostly following the repeal of Roe v. Wade and the gutting of bodily autonomy in the United States.
We love America.
USA. USA. Yeah, and I think with like intersectionality of intersex and trans issues, a lot of anti-trans bills that are related to like medical care are explicitly like medical care for minors explicitly exclude intersex kids because non-consensual like forced intersex surgery on like genitalia or like forced HRT on these kids is like a very accepted form of medical care where like, you know, Interact and the Intersex Justice Project have been like advocating against giving doctors the ability to perform these surgeries without like the child or the parents' consent. Like those things are still allowed in bills that are revoking trans kids' consent and ability to get life-saving gender-affirming care. Like they hate consent. They really do. It's their least favorite thing.
Gosh, it's really interesting like the intersex intercommunity stuff. I'm in a game design class, and one of the people in my game design class was made a game about like interacting with like different medical systems and like social systems as like an intersex person, and like they didn't have a favorable opinion of Interact. I was like kind of curious to hear more of why. And it's like fascinating just how like it's I don't know, I feel like intersex issues are kind of like seen as like it's only like a couple people.
It's like 2% of people or something.
It's like
that.
2% of people, and that's a lot of people if you do the math.
Well, also it's 2% that we know of. Because there's a lot of intersex conditions. Like a lot of people don't know that they're intersex until like they're like cut open and they find out that they have like
yeah, or like they do a genetic test and
yeah.
like, you actually have like a bunch of X's. It's not just 2 of them.
Yeah, and it's really, I guess, fascinating like how like intersex and trans like intersex is just a lot of like just common knowledge, not a lot of it across the board, and then like you have like these bills that are like explicitly like excluding like intersex minors from like this regulatory stuff, but on the same hand you have like medical professionals that do fundamentally not know the difference between trans people and intersex people.
Like, what were you doing for those 8 years you were in school? Did you not look it up once? Like,
I mean, there is a huge problem in the healthcare industry in general with lack of like empathy for a lot of their patients. Like, there's definitely been that conversation around like doctors understanding not understanding anything beyond what they've been taught in medical school. And like it's why I'm always iffy when like STEM students complain about having to take humanities classes, and I'm like, you're taking them because
you were going to be working with people.
Yeah, you're going to be working with people, and you should definitely take an ethics class at the very least.
There's like a fundamental lack of like ethics class across. Like I was talking about like a CS grad student, and like they just don't have ethics class, and he's just like, this is ridiculous. We're producing war criminals.
Literally, like I can't wait to work for Raytheon.
Mm-hmm.
I took a healthcare ethics class with the Disability Studies department last year. It was awesome. She was visiting from Emory University. It's like this incredible activist, Rosemary Garland Thompson. And it was all about, like, she is disabled herself, so it's like healthcare ethics from the perspective of a patient. And like every doctor should have to take that class. Every doctor should have to take like a queer and trans sensitivity course of like the basic slideshow of what does trans mean and what does intersex mean with the little genderbread man. Like, come on, like we need something. Yeah, it's disappointing. I am very lucky though, because I am disabled, so I have a lot of like interactions with the medical system that I've had like mostly positive interactions. Like the hospital I'm a part of allows like preferred names, and like it's so funny. Like I've had surgery quite a few times, and it's like that surgeon knows me better than I know myself, and he calls me Chris. So take that, transphobes. But yeah, do we want to cover one more thing before we wrap up? Because it's been an hour.
Let's do how we're gender fucking and we love it. Let's end on a positive note.
Yeah.
Because transness is all not doom and gloom, you know? There are things,
disclaimer.
things
I
we look
love being
forward to.
transgender.
I love being transgender.
It's my favorite
I literally
thing.
wouldn't choose to be anything else.
Yeah, the age-old question of the transmed 16-year-old attitude of like, transness is not a choice. Why would I choose this?
Yeah, it's like that martyrdom. Oh.
Yeah, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I have to, and it's like I'm doing it because it's fun.
It's
thanks.
fun, and I look hot.
Like trans people are automatically more hot just because like we like ourselves more now, so we dress better and like care about.
I also do feel like that since like I've come out as like non-binary and trans, like my self-confidence has definitely boosted more.
Yeah.
Like before that, like my self-confidence is like at like a low. I like really
and now look at your
myself.
fit. Look
Yeah,
at this
now
little
look at me.
fox.
That's a
This
cute
little
little
fox
tail.
hand sanitizer. It has a tail.
Yeah, it does have a tail.
Oh,
It has a little tail.
Cute.
That fox is transgender for anyone wondering.
Trans fox.
Trans fox. Transgender.
But yeah, my self-confidence like shot up because there are so many things that I can, not that you have to like necessarily be trans to experience like different clothing, but it definitely helps.
It's extra good.
Yeah, I think like what really got me is like I got top surgeries. Like that's really I'm so sick and tired of binding, man. Like
it's convenient.
It's so convenient. Do I miss my boobs? Yeah, I do. Did I make a whole zine about why I miss my boobs? Yes, I did. It'll be printed soon, I swear.
We gotta share your piss boy titty zine.
Yeah, it's called Tits. So you
that's right. There we go.
Yeah, it's called Tits. Hopefully I'm gonna be printing in next month.
Nice.
So trust.
That's pretty gender fucky, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I did like a pre-top surgery photo shoot just because I knew I'd miss them, and I do. Like every so often, I'm like, oh my god, where are they? But like I'm not gonna lie, I think like my self-confidence definitely boosted up, and it's even to the point like before I came to UCLA, I was like just some guy. Like I wasn't a popular student at all. I was just kind of like chilling. I was like happy, but like not very popular at all. Now like at UCLA, like my friends are like, oh, you're popular, and I'm like, not really, no. But I think it's just I've become much more like open and like wanting to like I dress like fun. I have like fits that are like that go hard.
Yeah.
And it's just because like I've now feel a little more comfortable dressing the way because I like how it fits on my body or whatever. And I don't know, it's great. I don't know. I think like the whole debate of like, oh, it's just transgenderism, like, oh, I didn't choose this. I just ended up, I just like, it's some freak accident, like you're Bruce Banner or whatever the fuck.
I absorbed too much gamma when I was 5, and now I'm a man.
Now I'm a man. But I think like, I don't know, I used to do a lot of volunteering in trans spaces in high school. Now I work at the LGBT center, but I'm still coming from like a really trans basis. And even like Voice Wag, it's like 4 trans people. Like, just trans people, they're more interesting. They're funnier. They
Hotter again.
Hotter again. Like, they're more interesting. Like, it's just the list keeps going on and on. They have more nuanced takes on the world. I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't I wouldn't want to go without trans people at all.
I feel like I'd be weird if I was cis.
Oh, I'd be so goddamn
It'd be weird.
weird.
And if I was a cis woman, it would be even worse. Jesus.
Oh, God.
Oh God. Nightmare. But yeah, I like that. I like, it's trans. I feel like right now trans pride is all, and visibility for those who have the privilege to show it is like so important, because the scariest thing to a conservative is a trans person who loves themselves and wants to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Like part of anti-trans legislation is their knowledge that without these resources, like, trans kids will die and will become depressed and potentially like end their lives, and being the role model that shows those kids like this is not the end, I feel like is such like a life affirming force.
Also too, like, it sucks because like none of that will ever push down the actual feelings that these kids have about being trans. Like, for me personally, like, I could never push out, you know, those thoughts of like, what if I wasn't a woman? Like, for me, like, that was kind of like the pushing off point. For me being non-binary, I was kind of like, what if I just wasn't one? And like, I could have tried to like suppress that, and I really could have, but it's like, why even put myself through that when I could just, you know, accept it for what it is, and also like be happier about it. And it sucks because like I also think too that there's not a lot of queer media that shows trans people being happy. I think
not being murdered.
Yeah, not being murdered. I feel like there's a lot of media that still shows trans people as being like these martyrs for the community. And like, or even like worse, it's movies that, you know, show really graphic scenes. What is it called? It had Emma Stone in it, I think.
I don't know.
Where she played a trans man. And like, that movie was just so depressing. It was just super like, why? I think as a whole we need to definitely work on like creating more positive trans content that doesn't revolve around trans people dying.
When Men Were Men by Aiden Dick and Izzy Rojas. Such a good, I don't know if it's streaming yet, but it should. It's such a good look at the trans masculine experience. That's some good content. Sort of. On HBO
think,
Max.
Like, being trans can be like really trippy.
Yeah.
In of itself. Like, that's not a bad thing. I mean that in like the best way possible. Like, being trans is definitely a trip.
Transness is fucky wucky / pause.
Yeah, / pause. Fucky wucky in a good way.
Let trans people make movies and stuff, and they'll be better, I promise.
If anybody...
Oh yeah, somebody hire Evan to be a cinematographer / screenwriter.
Yeah. I do TV writing.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah.
You know what? I should forget what I said. Forget what I said earlier. This is how you not end up in the pit.
Yeah.
That's all. I shouldn't say that. That's like too like Silence of the Lambs. Like,
oh no!
The pit.
Oh no, not the pit. But yeah, I like that as like a little ending, that like making like make more trans, like we create art, we're an OutWrite, you do your art and your filmmaking and your show, because like transness is something that inherently should be protected.
And like
yeah.
if you go on like the T-Boy Swag YouTube at the moment, like the past season is just a bunch of trans artist interviews, and they're all like local artists that are like having stuff being put out semi like soon or already put out. And you should go check it out.
Yes. I'll definitely put a link to that in the description. Trans art is beautiful. Trans artists are beautiful. You could get rid of all of us in an instant, and tomorrow another trans kid would be born.
No, because what do they think is gonna happen?
No,
what?
We genetically erase.
Like what? There's no. I don't think there's a trans gene.
There's like,
not a trans gene that makes people trans. I think not that science is like complete bullshit, but I do kind of think that's also kind of complete bullshit. Like, why do we need to have a trans gene to justify transness? Why can it not just be a thing in and of itself? Because I feel like people are a lot more complicated than the genes in their bodies.
There's like 4 letters in our genes repeated over and over. Like, well, we're a little more complicated than 4 letters.
I feel like it might fall into like a Fallout scenario where like in the first Fallout game, like the mutants are like we're built to live out in this wilderness, and they're gonna find like the trans gene and the gay gene, and they're gonna like get rid of it. We're like, we did it. We did it. We made it. And then like they'll find out later that just makes them infertile and they can't like reproduce. And it's just like
rid of it. And now the human race is doomed.
The human race is doomed.
Awkward.
Awkward moment.
That awkward moment when you try to eradicate transness and now you can't have any more babies. Oopsies.
God smiting your ass.
But yeah, any last thoughts? Any last words for the transgenders out there?
The transgenders of the transgenderism community.
The transgenderism conglomerate.
The trans
as your representatives.
Can we make merch that says transgender?
We should. I think that's actually
conglomerate.
So we can make like a cringy corporate logo. Oh, I'm into that.
Oh, I want a hat. Like I want like one of those like.
Oh yeah.
One of those dickbag like investor
caps. Get a tech vest with the logo on it.
The quarters it.
Oh my god.
Designing it stat.
Designing it stat. It will happen. That'll be the first Speak Out merch. Is the trans conglomerate outfit.
Trans conglomerate.
But yeah.
I don't have any thoughts.
No
I love you, trans people.
We love you.
You're literally the only bitches I can stand.
Yes, please.
Please.
Stay alive so that we can have friends.
Yeah, so we can have friends, because I'm stuck with these
trans. I need more trans friends.
Come to UCLA, even if you don't go here. Just hang out. Come find us.
Yeah.
We're
graduating
in like 6
months. Shit, yeah. Okay, in the next 6 months, come find us. And then after that, there are more trans people I'm sure you can find.
Next quarter, I want to hold like a T-Boy Swag social. I was supposed to hold it this quarter, and then I had no time. So.
Yes. Bunch of trans people in a room.
Trans
hanging
people
out.
In a room.
Pissing
everywhere.
Man cosplay. But yeah. Okay. Well, wait, what's your Instagram and stuff so I can shout you out?
My personal is, oh Jesus Christ, I forgot letters. It's like Evie Bara with like double B's and double R's, and then like T-Boy Swag is like TB_Y .swag, I think.
I'll put it on the screen. So
Yeah. You should do like the like as I'm saying it, one letter goes up. Those are our links. We have a link tree in the T-Boy Swag in our bio. We have a playlist. We have like the YouTube videos.
Yeah, you can follow OutWrite on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at OutWrite Newsmag. You can read our bi-weekly articles on outwritenewsmag.org. That's right, spelled WRITE. Follow Evan at the very confusing handles that he just said. And I have been Christopher.
I've been Judah.
I've been Piss Boy.
Thanks for pissing. We'll see you next week for an interview with Grocer.
Yes.
Our punk band. Very excited for that.
Ooh.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.